Hart Island, New York City Cemetery is believed to be the single largest AIDS burial site. SCB1, 1985, Special Case Baby 1, the first baby to die of AIDS in New York City. In 1985, individuals who passed away from AIDS were buried in a separate isolated area on Hart Island, away from the remains of other individuals. There are no known existing records of these burials. These burials were conducted in 14-foot deep individual graves, which was much deeper than the typical 3-foot burials. This practice was a result of the intense fear and stigma surrounding the disease at the time, as there was little understanding of how it spread. There are about 30 individual adult graves. The urban park rangers tell the story of Mrs. Betty Lee Corey. Betty Lee Corey was a hospital clerk and grandmother in Baltimore, Maryland, who became a foster mother to children of HIV-infected mothers. Along with her husband Emery, Mrs. Corey began caring for children affected by the AIDS epidemic, driven by a desire to give them a loving home. The Coreys fostered 41 children, adopting 4, and became a beacon of compassion during a time of widespread fear and misunderstanding. While working in the pediatric unit at Baltimore City Hospitals, she met Kedra, a baby girl with AIDS who had spent her first years in the hospital due to a lack of other options. Deeply moved, the Coreys overcame numerous bureaucratic obstacles to become Kedra's foster parents in 1986. Despite facing societal ignorance and discrimination, they persisted in their mission. The Urban Park Rangers will tell the story of the struggles the Coreys faced upon Kedra's passing.
What Ranger Fee will be reading is actually testimony in 1989 that led to, or was part of leading to the passing of the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Alright, so this is a woman named Mrs. Betty Corey in Baltimore again. About a week before Kedra died, we decided to begin making arrangements for her funeral and burial. I was a member of the Baltimore County Task Force on AIDS, and at one of our meetings, the president of the Funeral Directors Association was there, and I realized at the time that we were going to face a lot of discrimination. We began to make phone calls and were turned down. They either would not take her, or they would not offer the full services they offered anyone else. It took 26 phone calls to 26 different funeral directors before we finally found one who was willing to take our baby and bury her. We were given all kinds of stories. They would not embalm her. They would not take her only to the they would only take her to the crematorium. It would have to be a closed casket. There would be no viewing. I even had one who told me he would not accept her because we had her at home, and we would not properly bag her to protect his employees. One who was willing to take her wanted an extra $500 because of her diagnosis, and told us if we allowed an autopsy, it would be significantly higher. It was horrible. We had fought discrimination while she was alive, and I did not expect to face that kind of discrimination at death too. Then later on in her testimony, she goes on to say, these children have to fight to live, and I don't feel like they should have to fight for the right to die. And for me, she's obviously talking about her child, Kedra, and other children that died of AIDS complications. But for me, that extends to everyone who ever contracted or died from AIDS complications, not just children, right? Fighting for the right to die.